The foster boy I brought into my home had only one thing he called his own, a faded photo of his mother. I thought it was just a quiet heartbreak. But the night he dropped it at my brother's wedding rehearsal, my mother's oldest friend picked it up and froze. She looked at me and whispered, "That woman. She destroyed your father. That's Claire Madison." And just like that, the past we buried 16 years ago came back for all of us. With my foster son at the center of it, I never imagined I'd be the one ironing napkins at 6 in the morning trying to decide between ivory and cream for the table linens. But there I was, standing in the quiet of my modest kitchen in Charleston, South Carolina, prepping for my younger brother's wedding like it was my own. Liam Caldwell, 32, was getting married in just 5 days, and if he was nervous, he sure wasn't showing it. I, on the other hand, hadn't slept in 3 nights. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the ceiling fan and the sound of Noah's footsteps upstairs. He always woke early. 15 and impossibly polite, he never slammed doors or played music too loud. He moved through life like he was afraid to disturb it. I'd officially become his guardian 6 months ago after the state finalized everything. He didn't have much, no known relatives, no backstory he was willing to share. Just a small suitcase, a battered notebook, and one photograph of a woman he said was his mother. That photograph had seen better days. The corners were soft, the colors faded, and a small crease ran diagonally through the center. Still, it was always within arm's reach for Noah. He kept it in his pocket, his nightstand, even under his pillow. I'd asked him about it once, maybe twice. He said she died when he was little, and that was all he remembered. No names, no dates, just the photo. I didn't push. I knew what it was like to live with unanswered questions. The doorbell rang sharp and too early. I walked over expecting Liam, maybe a delivery, but it was Dottie Hale, my late mother's best friend. She lived just 2 blocks away, still wore bright lipstick every day, and spoke like she was always announcing something. Today she was holding a box of old silverware. "Thought you might need these for the rehearsal dinner," she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. "They belong to your mama. She'd want them on the table." I nodded and took the box, though I wasn't sure anyone would notice if we used disposable forks. Dottie had a habit of inserting herself into situations with the grace of a wrecking ball. But her heart was always in the right place. She placed a wrinkled hand on my shoulder and studied me with that sharp, no-nonsense gaze of hers. "You look like you haven't slept. Something wrong with the kid?" I shook my head. "Noah's fine. He's quiet, but good, polite. Smarter than me, probably." Dottie softened. She'd met him a few times. Always brought cookies, even though Noah never took more than one. "You done good, Ethan. Your daddy would be proud, that name. Daddy." It still made my chest tighten even 16 years later. I offered Dottie a tight smile and busied myself with the silverware. After she left, I found Noah in the backyard, crouched under the pecan tree with his sketchbook. He looked up when I approached, eyes unreadable as always. "What you working on?" He shrugged. "Just drawing. The tree, and maybe the house." "Can I see?" He hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward me. It was good. Better than good, really. My porch, the cracked sidewalk, the bent gutter, all of it captured in black pencil lines that felt more honest than any photo. I noticed the corner of the photo peeking out from the edge of the sketchbook, almost like a bookmark. "She was beautiful," I said quietly. Noah didn't look at me. He just nodded. "Yeah, she was. You remember anything else about her?" He paused. His fingers gripped the pencil a little tighter. "She sang a lot, and she smelled like lavender." "That's it." I wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but everything that came to mind felt hollow. So I sat down next to him instead, both of us staring at the tree like it might offer answers. Inside my phone buzzed, a message from Liam. Need to talk. Sophie's mom invited someone weird to the wedding. Don't freak. I frowned. Of course he'd text instead of call. That was Liam. I went inside and typed back. Who? He replied quickly. Some woman named Clara Morgan says she's an old friend of Sophie's mom, flying in from Nevada. Clara Morgan, the name meant nothing to me, but something about it tugged at a thread in the back of my mind. I made a note to ask Sophie later. Weddings brought out ghosts. I just hoped this one would stay buried. In the evening, I made dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread. Noah offered to help, and I let him. He set the table in near silence, humming a tune under his breath that I couldn't place, probably something his mother used to sing. Something lavender-scented and soft. We ate quietly. Outside, the wind rustled the pecan leaves, and for a moment the house felt like it used to when I was a kid. Before the scandal, before the silence, before everything burned down. Later, when Noah had gone to bed and the dishes were done, I sat alone in the living room staring at the old photo albums Dottie had dropped off last week. I hadn't opened them yet. I wasn't sure if I was ready. Some things are better left in boxes, but something about Clara Morgan. Something about that name wouldn't let go. So I opened the first album, just one photo, just to see. And there she was, not in the foreground, not smiling, not even looking at the camera, but standing just behind my father in the corner of a photo from 2006, a woman with dark red hair and a tilt to her head that I hadn't seen in over a decade. A tilt that matched the woman in Noah's photo exactly. I shut the album, my hands suddenly cold. Clara Morgan. No, Claire Madison. I sat there for a long time, fingers resting on the edge of the album. The air around me suddenly colder than it had been just minutes earlier. My father's faint smile in the photo, the way he stood slightly turned and behind him. That shadow of a woman with red hair and a gaze that wasn't even aimed at the camera. That tilt of the head. I hadn't seen it in years, but I remembered it like it had been carved into my brain. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence. Clara Morgan couldn't be Claire Madison. That woman had vanished after tearing our lives apart. No trial, no apology, not even a newspaper headline, just gone. She wouldn't come back now, would she? And why at Liam's wedding? At some point in the night, I drifted off, waking before dawn to the soft creak of the hallway floorboards. Noah was already up. I found him at the kitchen table, hunched over the same sketchbook, that old photograph placed carefully to the side. He didn't hear me come in. He was focused, lips pressed together, pencil sweeping in clean, confident lines. I poured a cup of coffee and leaned against the doorway, watching him work. The morning sun hit his profile just right. He had this seriousness about him, like he carried things older than his years. I saw myself in him sometimes, not in looks, but in the way he held slants, like a blanket. That her. He jumped slightly, then looked down at the photo. His hand moved instinctively to protect it, fingers curling around the edges. Sorry, I said, raising my hands. Didn't mean to scare you. He relaxed a little, nodding. Yeah, that's her. She holding you, I think so. I mean, I don't remember, but that's what the woman who gave me the photo said. She said it was the only thing I had left. I stepped closer, careful not to startle him again. The photo was worn thin, the kind you could tell had been handled too many times. The woman was young, maybe early 20s. Her hair was deep red, long pulled into a loose braid. She was holding a baby against her chest, face turned downward, almost out of frame. There was a tenderness to the way she held the child, but her expression was unreadable. You ever show this to anyone before just you? He said. And the social worker, I guess. Did they know who she was? He shook his head. Ms. Pritchard tried looking. DNA tests, Foster records, nothing came up. Said it was like she didn't exist. Noah leaned back in his chair, his voice quiet. Sometimes I think she made herself disappear on purpose. I sat across from him and studied the photo again, this time with different eyes. That tilt of the head. That same jawline. Could it really be her? Did you ever notice anything familiar about her face? I asked. He looked at me confused. What do you mean? Never mind, I said quickly. Just a thought. He nodded slowly, then closed his sketchbook. He tucked the photo gently into the inner sleeve and held it against his chest for a moment before setting it aside. I didn't push further. Something in me knew I wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. Later that morning, we drove to the florist to finalize Liam and Sophie's flower arrangements. Noah came with me, earbuds in, lost in whatever music he had on his phone. I didn't bother him. I needed the quiet to think. The florist was a tiny shop run by an older couple who argued affectionately while wrapping bouquets. I confirmed the delivery schedule and checked everything twice. Liam might be laid back, but I couldn't let anything fall through the cracks. Not when everything else felt like it might. On the way back, I caught Noah staring out the window, his expression distant. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About her. He didn't answer right away. Sometimes I wonder if she's still alive. If maybe she left because she had to, like... Maybe someone was after her. You think she ran to protect you? He shrugged. I don't know. I just don't want to believe she left because she didn't want me. That hit something deep in my chest. I'd asked myself the same thing about my dad after he died. Whether he'd given up or just couldn't carry it anymore. I don't think she didn't want you, I said quietly. That kind of love doesn't show up in a photo unless it's real. He nodded but didn't smile, just turned back to the window. That afternoon, I got a call from Sophie. She sounded nervous. Hey, so, about that guest, Clara Morgan. Yeah, she confirmed. She's coming. You ever met her once, I think. When I was like 10, my mom said she used to be a friend from before I was born. Moved away a long time ago. What's she like? I don't remember much. Red hair, big voice. She scared me, I think. I froze. Red hair. Yeah. Why? No reason, I lied. Just curious. After we hung up, I went back to the photo album. I flipped through more pages hunting for clues. And there it was again, a different photo. This time my father at a business dinner smiling with some clients. And off to the side, barely in frame, the same woman. She wasn't just someone he knew. She was everywhere. I stared at the photo until the light outside turned gold. Then I heard Noah's voice from the hallway. Do you think people can really change? I looked up. Why do you ask? Just wondering, he said. Because sometimes I think, if I ever meet her, I won't even recognize her. I didn't know what to say to that, because maybe that was true. Maybe she was already here. Maybe she'd been here all along. And maybe, just maybe, everything was about to fall apart again. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft creaks of the old house, settling into the ground like it always did when everything else was still. The air was heavy, thicker than usual, like it carried ghosts I had never truly buried. The photographs, the name, the tilt of her head. Claire Madison. It had been years, but now she was back in some form, even if only through the cracks in my memory. I was 18 the year it all came down. 2007, I remember the summer heat sticking to my skin, the scent of fresh-cut lumber still clinging to Dad's clothes, the hum of saws and steel and order. My father, Andrew Caldwell, was the kind of man people noticed when he walked into a room. Tall, calm, precise. He had built Caldwell Structural Group from the ground up, starting with nothing but a pickup truck and blueprints drawn on our kitchen table. By the time I started high school, we were living in a house with a pool and a stone fireplace. He had 3 offices across South Carolina and contracts with city projects. Everyone wanted to shake his hand. And then Claire appeared. He introduced her to us at dinner one night, said they'd met at a fundraiser in Columbia. She was younger than him by a stretch, probably mid-30s, with red hair and sharp eyes that never stopped scanning. She laughed too loud, touched his shoulder a little too often. But Dad smiled around her like a man who hadn't smiled in years. Mom had been gone 3 years by then. Cancer. I guess he was lonely. At first, Liam and I thought maybe she'd make him happier. He deserved that. After so many late nights and missed birthdays, maybe he needed someone soft to balance all the weight he carried. But it was never about softness. Claire didn't ask about us. She never remembered our names when she visited the office or brought him lunch. When she moved in, she started changing things. Little things at first. She repainted Mom's study, got rid of her books, had Dad move some funds into her name because it would make real estate easier to handle. She started coming to meetings with him even when she had no reason to. People whispered, but no one dared say it to his face. He was too proud to see it. I still remember the day I found out. It was August. I'd just graduated high school and planned to start community college in the fall. I came home from work to find him sitting at the kitchen table, still in his suit tie, loosened hands clenched around a single sheet of paper. His face was gray. Not pale gray. "She's gone," he said. "What do you mean, gone?" "She drained 3 of our accounts, took my keys, left this." He handed me the note. Her handwriting was perfect, clean, cold. She thanked him for everything, told him it was never personal, just necessary. She said she hoped he'd rebuild, that he was smart enough to understand the difference between business and love. That was the first time I saw my father cry. The fallout came fast. The bank froze assets. Clients pulled out. His name hit the local papers when a city contract defaulted. People assumed he had done something shady, that he was part of it. Claire had left no trace. The authorities said they couldn't find her. No paper trail, no birth records matching her ID. It was like she'd never existed. I didn't know someone could just erase themselves like that. Dad tried to hang on for a while. Sold the lake house, laid off staff, started working out of the garage. But the pressure crushed him from the inside. The night before my first college class, I found him in the garage, slumped over the drafting table. There was no note, no goodbye, just silence, the kind that hollows you out forever. Liam was 16. He shut down for months, stopped playing guitar, stopped talking much. We moved in with Dottie for a while until I found work and rented a 2-bedroom across town. I didn't go to school. I started working full-time at a hardware supplier, then picked up side jobs until I could pay for Liam's braces and keep gas in the car. For a long time, I didn't speak Dad's name. I was angry. Angry he hadn't fought harder, angry he'd let her in, angry he'd left us behind. But that fades with time. What stayed was the hole he left and the name I never forgot, Claire Madison. Now I was 36, sitting in that same town, haunted by the same name. And she was back, or someone pretending to be her. Clara Morgan. The name tasted like copper in my mouth. The next morning I found Noah in the living room, cross-legged on the floor, sketching again. He had the photo out beside him. This time I noticed something I hadn't before. Behind the woman in the picture, barely visible in the blur of background, there was a partial sign. Just a few letters, a D, an L, and maybe the edge of a W. I felt my heart stop. Noah. Where did you get this photo? It was given to me when I entered foster care. The woman who dropped me off said it was all they had. She didn't know anything else. Do you know where it was taken? He shook his head. Why, I stood, grabbed my phone, and snapped a picture of the image. I zoomed in. Caldwell. That sign was part of my dad's company logo. The original office in Columbia. The background was blurry, yes, but I would have recognized that sign anywhere. Noah stared at me, eyebrows knit. What is it? I couldn't tell him yet. Not like this. Not until I was sure. Nothing. I just thought I saw something familiar. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push either. I spent the rest of the day in my garage digging through a box I hadn't opened in over a decade. Old files, receipts, my father's blueprints. And finally, tucked between an old award plaque and a binder of invoices, I found the original logo design for Caldwell Structural Group. Same font, same placement. The photo Noah carried had been taken in front of my dad's building, and the woman holding him was Claire. I stood there holding the paper, my knuckles white, chest tight. My father's killer, because that's what she was. No matter how poetic the stories might be, was Noah's mother. And he had no idea. I spent the rest of that night in the garage, my hands stiff from sorting through old files, my head pounding with questions I couldn't ask. Every corner of my mind screamed that it was her, that Noah's mother and the woman who destroyed my family were the same. But I couldn't say it out loud. Not yet. Not when the boy upstairs still believed that photograph was the only good thing he had. The following morning, the air felt heavier, the kind of thick southern humidity that clung to your skin and made you tired before noon. I opened the windows anyway, hoping for a breeze while I sorted through emails and wedding prep. Liam had sent over the final seating chart and guest list for me to double-check. I clicked through the attachment out of habit more than necessity. I had already memorized most of it. Then I saw the name, Clara Morgan. She was listed next to family friends of the Landers and marked with a +1. No notes, no contact info, just a name. My stomach tightened. I stared at it for a while before picking up the phone and calling Liam. "Hey," he answered on the third ring. "You get the list?" "Yeah," I said. "Who's Clara Morgan?" "Oh, that," Sophie's mom added her. "Some old friend from her Vegas days. She said Clara reached out recently and asked if she could stop by the wedding. I guess they hadn't talked in years. That doesn't seem weird to you?" "Not really. People reconnect over weddings all the time." "You ever met her?" "Nope. Neither has Sophie. But her mom vouches for her, so." He trailed off like he was about to say something else, but changed his mind. "So you're good with her coming?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "I mean, it's Sophie's family table. I trust her." "Why, is something wrong?" "No," I lied. "Just making sure we don't overbook the space," he chuckled. "You sound like a wedding planner." "That's because I basically am." After we hung up, I pulled up the guest photo that Sophie had attached in the next email. It was just a group shot of a bridal shower or brunch, nothing formal. Everyone was smiling, champagne flutes in hand. I scanned it slowly, unsure what I was even looking for. Then I saw her, off to the side, not posing, not smiling, just caught in motion mid-turn like she was about to step away. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, dyed darker now, and she wore large sunglasses that hid most of her face. But the tilt of her chin, the angle of her shoulders, that presence, it hit me in the gut like a fist. I zoomed in as far as the image would allow. The resolution wasn't great, but something about her posture sent my heart racing. It was the same stance I'd seen in those old photos with my father. She hadn't changed much in the way she moved, that cold confidence, that practiced ease, like someone who always knew when the camera would catch her. Still, it wasn't confirmation. I needed more. Noah came downstairs not long after carrying a stack of dishes he must have taken to his room the night before. "Morning," he mumbled. I nodded. "Morning." He placed the dishes in the sink, then stood awkwardly near the doorway watching me. "You okay?" "Yeah, just looking over wedding stuff." He hesitated. "You want help?" "Sure," I said, waving him over. "I'll show you the layout." We sat at the dining table together. I opened the printed floor plan and explained where the tables would go, who would sit where. He nodded along, not asking much. When I pointed to the Landers family table, I said, "One of their guests is someone named Clara Morgan. You ever heard of her?" Noah blinked slowly, then shook his head. "No." "Why, no reason. Just checking. I didn't want her getting a plate meant for someone else." He gave a half smile, unsure whether to believe me. I let it go. That afternoon, I went to the bakery for cake samples. Sophie had asked me to make sure the strawberry filling wasn't too sweet. I tasted 3 different slices, but all I could think about was that photo, that name. On my way home, I stopped by Dottie's. She was in her garden, elbow deep in soil, humming some old Patsy Cline tune. "Hey there, sugar," she called out. "You look like you saw a ghost, might have," I muttered. She wiped her hands and led me inside. I showed her the guest list, pointed at the name. "Clara Morgan," I said. "Does that ring any bells?" She squinted at it for a long time, lips pursed. "No, but Morgan's a common name." Why, I showed her the photo next. Her eyes widened just slightly. "That woman in the back, you think that's her?" I nodded. "It's the stance, Dottie. You see it too." She exhaled, slow. "If that's who I think it is, you need to be real careful, Ethan. This ain't some ghost story. That woman wrecked your father. She didn't just take his money, she humiliated him." "I know, but if it's really her, she's about to walk into my brother's wedding like nothing ever happened." "You gonna confront her?" "Not yet. I need proof. I need to be sure." Dottie touched my arm. "She's good at hiding. She always was." I left with more questions than answers, a dull ache pounding behind my eyes. Back home, I found Noah asleep on the couch, sketchbook on his chest, the photograph poking out from between the pages again. That picture had followed him his whole life. And now it was following me too. Dinner at the Rosewood Terrace felt like stepping into a painting I did not want to be in. The chandeliers glowed softly overhead. Curtains gathered in gold tassels, waiters moving like whispers between tables, dressed in ivory linens and rose bouquets. Sophie had arranged everything meticulously, the kind of perfection that unsettled me, because I knew how quickly perfect things break. Guests began arriving just after sunset, Liam's childhood friends, Sophie's work colleagues, distant relatives. I wore a suit I had not touched in months, feeling its stiffness as if it reminded me of all the responsibilities I carried. Noah came beside me, quiet, clutching the photograph beneath the jacket pocket, trying to keep it hidden from the chatter of strangers. Suddenly she appeared. Clara Morgan. She floated in like someone who believed she belonged everywhere. That flash of recognition coursed through me. Her red hair now shorter and glossed, her posture straight, her laugh soft yet confident. When Sophie greeted her at the door, I forced a smile and greeted her too. Sophie introduced her look, who came all the way from Nevada just for us. Clara's voice was warm, but it carried an edge I couldn't place. She asked how I was doing, and I said fine, quietly. She nodded and talked to Liam briefly, congratulated him. She placed one hand on his shoulder. I felt that hand linger just long enough to leave something in the air that felt wrong. Dinner was served, and the room settled into polite laughter and clinking forks. I glanced at Noah, saw him glancing down at the wooden floor, restless. He had pulled the photograph out. His hand trembled for a second. I caught a glimpse. My heart stuttered. It was quiet except for soft music. Noah's eyes darted around. He tried to tuck the photo away beneath his napkin. In doing so, it slipped. The edges of it caught against the table leg and fell to the floor, fluttered like a wounded bird. I heard Dottie gasping and saw her face go pale. She was seated across the table from me, and her silverware rattled as she set her fork down. She stood slowly, nearly knocking over her wine glass, and reached to pick up the photo. Panic stretched in her eyes. I followed her movement, saw the woman in the photo, the curve of her arm, the tilt of her head. It was undeniably Claire Madison. Dottie pressed the photo to her chest as though it were proof she had feared recognizing for years. Her eyes flicked up and met mine. I felt cold all over, my jaw clenched. I wanted to shout your name, but syllables failed me. Guests nearby murmured. The music shivered into silence, or maybe it just felt that way. Dottie called me aside in the garden afterward. The scent of blooming jasmine filled the air but did nothing to soothe the tension between us. She placed her hand on my arm and her voice shook slightly. Ethan, I cannot pretend anymore. She is not here. She is standing on our doorstep. Clara posing like she belongs. I watched the moonlight pale her skin and her posture as she spoke. My mind spun. The photograph felt like a noose tightening around my chest. That woman was here under our roof. What do we do? She pulled the photo from me and held it between us. You see this, Ethan? She did this to your dad. I nodded but could not speak at first. I have to know she is going to try something. Be careful, I promise. We stood there under the jasmine vines, the party continuing inside, unaware. The night wind whispered through leaves. I let Dottie go back inside while I stayed in the garden, hands in my pockets, chest hollow. Noah's laughter drifted out a window somewhere sudden wrong. The photograph was in my coat pocket, weight heavy, full of questions that had no answers yet. I walked into the empty hallway beside the terrace, the murmur of guests muffled behind the double doors. My fingers curled around the photo in my coat. My pulse a dull roar in my ears. I had known it in my bones before Dottie said a word, but now the truth had a name, a face, and it was sitting 2 tables away drinking white wine like she hadn't wrecked a man's life. Claire Madison was alive, and she had changed her name. Clara Morgan. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The overhead lights buzzed faintly and a waiter passed by without acknowledging me. I closed my eyes and focused. I couldn't lose it. Not now, not in the middle of my brother's wedding weekend. But I kept seeing her. The way she held her glass, the precise way she crossed her legs, the way her gaze swept over a room like she was always scanning for opportunity or escape. Her hair was darker and the lines around her mouth a bit deeper, but she hadn't changed. My memory didn't fail me. I remembered her perfume, sweet and sharp like crushed lilies and metal. I remembered how she smiled at my father like he was her prize. I remembered the last dinner we had before everything fell apart. She had worn a green silk dress that night. I remember because she'd laughed when my father said he liked it, then said it wasn't silk but cashmere blend. She liked correcting people even on the compliments they gave her. I took out my phone and searched her name again. Clara Morgan. Nothing solid, just a LinkedIn page that said she worked in interior design consulting. No college listed, no employment history before 2015. A few grainy images came up, but nothing that would have caught my attention before. She had made a new life, wiped the old one clean. I opened my old files. Claire Madison. There were photos from the mid-2000s, newspaper articles about the Caldwell firm collapse. My dad's picture in one of them beside a quote about community trust. In another, a blurry photo from a charity gala. She was on his arm, smiling. I zoomed in on her face, then held up the rehearsal photos side by side. Same cheekbones, same smile, same tilt of the head. It was her. I put the phone down and pressed my palms to my eyes. My father had trusted that woman, loved her, believed her. She gutted him and vanished. And now, 15 years later, she walked back into our lives under a different name, uninvited but welcomed like an old friend. What was she doing here? I stepped back into the dining hall, trying to stay invisible. She was still at her table, chatting with Sophie's mother. Her laughter floated across the room, syrupy and practiced. Liam was nowhere in sight. Sophie looked tense, her fingers curled tightly around her wine glass. Maybe she felt it too, that something was off. I sat beside Noah, who was focused on his dessert, his sketch pad resting on his lap. He looked up when I joined him, eyes cautious. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Just tired." He nodded, then glanced toward Clara's table. "She's really fancy." "Yeah," I muttered. He lowered his voice. "Did I do something wrong, dropping the picture?" "No." "You didn't." He studied me a moment longer, then turned back to his drawing. I watched her until the dinner ended, until guests began to rise and say their goodbyes. She hugged Sophie's mother like they were sisters, complimented the floral arrangements, kissed someone's cheek on her way out. Then she walked past me without hesitation. "Good night, Ethan," she said. Her voice was the same, smooth, deliberate. I didn't reply. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she disappeared into the corridor. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out every box I had tucked away in the attic, everything from the Caldwell Company. Old ledgers, meeting minutes, canceled checks. Claire had been on payroll for 4 months, listed as independent PR consultant. There was no contract, no address, just the payments. And after she vanished, 3 of our key clients canceled. 2 of them had been in direct contact with her according to a meeting log. It was all there, laid out in plain sight, but no one had cared enough to look. Or maybe they had, but without a trail to follow, there was nothing they could do. No one had proof of fraud, just loss and ruin. I found an envelope with my father's handwriting. Notes from a meeting 2 weeks before his death. Scribbles about a merger. The words "Claire handling it" circled 3 times. I read it over and over until the ink blurred. I paced the living room for hours. She didn't come back to destroy us this time. She didn't need to. She came to watch, or maybe to see if anyone remembered. Maybe she thought enough time had passed that no one would recognize her. But Dottie did, and now I did too. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and began writing names, contacts, people who might know something. I listed addresses I could check, background searches I could run, questions I needed to ask. Sophie's mother without spooking her. If Clara was here for a reason, I would find it. I circled her name, then underlined it twice. By morning I had 3 pages of notes and not a single good answer. Every direction I looked raised more questions, and I needed someone who could help me navigate the legal mess my father's past had left behind. I picked up the phone and called Aaron Lewis. Aaron had been a friend since college, now a real estate and probate attorney based in Atlanta. Sharp as glass and twice as clear when she spoke. She was the one person I trusted not to sugarcoat anything. "I need you to take a look at something for me," I said. "You sound like you're sitting on a grenade," she replied. "Close. I'll be in town by lunch." We met at her office downtown, a place tucked between a yoga studio and a Thai restaurant. Erin looked the same, black blazer glasses perched on her head, always tapping her pen like it held the rhythm of her brain. "So what are we digging into?" she asked as I handed over the manila folder. "My dad's company, Caldwell Structure Design. There's something weird with his will. And a woman, Claire Madison, she might be back, under a different name. Erin flipped through the documents. Some were old printouts, others yellowed copies of estate filings from 2007. She frowned as she read. Your dad's original will was never fully contested, no. After he died, everything fell apart too fast. Liam and I were barely holding on. The house was taken, the company shut down, and no one fought back. She tapped her nail on one of the forms. You said Claire was on payroll. Yeah, for a few months. Listed as PR consultant. She vanished right before everything collapsed. She scanned down a notarized line and paused. This filing, there's something off here. The document recorded in the county's probate system doesn't match the reference number on the file copy. This could be a duplicate will, a duplicate, or a forged version. If someone swapped the final version with an earlier draft or inserted changes quietly, there'd be no way to tell unless you had access to both. My mouth went dry. Would that be enough to reopen the estate, maybe? If the original will exists and it proves your father's intentions were altered illegally, then yes. Especially if assets were misappropriated. I leaned back in the chair. So Claire could have gotten access to it back then? If she had influence or access to your dad's records, yes. But I'd need more to build a case. She handed me back the folder, her expression careful. Why is this coming up now? Because I think she's come back for something. She's here, at Liam's wedding, under a new name, and no one else recognizes her. Only Dottie. She confirmed it, and I've got a photo of her from the wedding and an old one from 2007. It's her Erin. Then this isn't just a ghost from the past, she said. She's after something. Exactly. And I think Sophie might be involved or at least being used. She's close with Claire or Clara, whatever she calls herself now. And I've seen them whispering more than once. You think Sophie's in on it? I don't know. But I can't ignore it. The timing's too convenient. Erin folded her hands together. Then we need to act fast. If Claire's trying to reclaim something or hide it, we need to know what it is and who else might be helping her. I'll reach out to a contact at the county archive, see if the original will ever made it to permanent storage. If not, we'll dig from there. Thanks, Erin. Watch your step, Ethan. If she's who you say she is, she won't play fair. I left her office with more weight than I'd carried walking in. At home, Noah was watching a crime documentary. He muted it when I walked through the door. Hey, that lady at the dinner, she's not just a guest, is she? I paused. What makes you say that? You looked like you saw a ghost when she walked in. I sat down beside him. That woman may have hurt my family a long time ago. And I think she's trying to do it again. He was quiet for a while. Do you think she hurt my mom? I looked into his eyes and felt a sting in my chest. I didn't have an answer. Not one I could give him yet. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He nodded, small and brave. Okay. Later that night, I searched Sophie's social media accounts. Nothing suspicious, but one post from last year caught my attention. A photo of her at a charity fundraiser in Vegas. Beside her in the background, barely visible, was a woman with red hair facing away from the camera. Same posture, same dress style. It had been over a year ago. She'd been around longer than I thought. The truth was unraveling one thread at a time. But the knot at the center was still tight, and I could feel it tightening around all of us. The next afternoon, I made my way across town to see Toby Grant, owner of Rosewood Terrace, where the wedding will be held. The sun hung low behind the magnolias, and I checked my reflection in the restaurant's glass door before stepping inside. Toby was standing behind the polished bar, polishing glasses even though business hours were over. He looked older than I remembered after the company collapse, but his eyes were sharp like always. Toby set the glass down when he saw me. "Ethan Caldwell, right?" "On the dot as always," he said. I nodded. "I need to ask you about something, Toby." He raised an eyebrow. "About the guest list and the cameras at the rehearsal dinner." He frowned. "The cameras were there for decoration mostly and some footage for Sophie's mom, I think." Why, I looked at him directly. "Clara Morgan is on the guest list under that name, correct?" Toby hesitated. "Yes, she is." "Did she ask for cameras to be taken down or footage to be edited?" He glanced toward the back of the restaurant, then shook his head. "Not asked until lately, but a few hours ago I got a call from someone said they're concerned about being caught on camera that someone was Clara Morgan." Toby looked guilty or something close. "You got paid for this?" he asked. "I need truth." He sighed and ran a hand through silver hair. "Fine. She paid me to remove any footage captured around the bar area for people coming in and out. She didn't want entrances recorded, and she paid me again to include her name under guests under false identity. That identity being Clara Morgan. She knew what she was doing." My heart pounded. "So she's using Sophie's wedding to rebuild something?" Toby nodded. "She's made connections with friends of Sophie's mom, used family ties to renew her standing socially. She must think chances are good no one will question her story." I took a breath. "This is more than just a bad memory, Toby. It's strategy. It's manipulation. It's cold." He sunk back. "You ever wonder who else she's contacted?" I asked. He said he didn't know. I left the restaurant with a folder of receipts Toby gave me, showing wire transfers from a year ago from an account in Reno, Nevada, to his business account labeled Event Services, then Security Camera Maintenance. On the drive home, with traffic crawling, I stared out the window at packs of oak trees draped in Spanish moss. I thought about the stakes. It always seemed like weddings fixed. Broken things gave people a chance to be happy, but this wedding was being used as stage for something darker. I walked into the house after dusk. The lamp by the couch flickered, and I found Noah asleep, curled up with his sketchpad, the photo tucked into its pages. I sat beside him, careful not to wake him. I held the receipts in my hand like hot coals. Guilt and fury knotted in my stomach. He stirred and I whispered, "Sorry to wake you." He opened his eyes, saw the folder. Then he sat up. "What's that? Proof that she is playing everyone?" Noah frowned. "Is she bad?" I looked at him. "Yes, but not in the way you think." He didn't understand yet, and maybe he shouldn't. He closed his eyes again and hugged the sketchpad. I kissed his forehead. "Go back to sleep." As I walked away, I realized I had crossed a line tonight. I was no longer protector, just a man with a mission, and mission needed clarity. I carried the folder of receipts and Toby's words with me into Erin's office the next morning. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, making dust motes drift like ghosts in the air. Erin looked up from her desk when I walked in. She gestured to a chair. "You sure you want to go through with this?" she asked quietly. I nodded. I pushed the receipts toward her. "These are payments to Toby Grant. Camera removal, false identity guest, all traced back to a bank in Reno. I want to know everything, Erin." She adjusted her glasses and sorted through the documents. The wire transfers, bank statements, some emails she found through public records. Then she paused, thumb tracing a line in a digital image of a scanned document. "Here," she said. "This is interesting." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "This email is from 3 years ago. Sophie attended a gala at the Venetian in Las Vegas. The event program is public. See this picture? Sophie is on stage presenting the check to a charity. Behind her in the crowd is a woman with red hair, profile turned away. Could be anyone. But look here at the badge she wore, and look at that necklace Sophie has in this photo at home. My chest tightened. Sophie wore the same necklace in the old family photo, a silver leaf pendant, just like Dad's office picture. That's impossible unless they shared something. Aaron frowned. You think it means she knew each other then? I think so. And that raises another question. Why would Claire let you believe Sophie was only Lander's family, if maybe she always intended to build alliances through her? Aaron nodded slow. This gets darker, Ethan. We need to see Sophie's birth records, her adoption or guardianship papers if there are any. See if there is any link to Claire. We found a sealed record from 20 years ago. Sophie Landers, born in Henderson, Nevada, under name Sophie Madison Child, record. Filed, then seal lifted when she turned 18. Mother listed as Claire Madison, father was unknown. I felt like I'd been punched. Everything clicked. Sophie wore Claire's name once. Her birth certificate had Claire's signature as mother, and public records sealed it so few people knew. Sophie didn't know. Neither did I. Claire must have assumed she would never know. Sophie would take her last name or rise socially. I left Aaron's office and went to Sophie's apartment. I knocked and she answered in a white lace dress she'd bought earlier for a dress rehearsal. Her hair tied back, cheeks flushed from a spin class. Hey, Sophie, can I come in? She stepped aside. Of course, I closed the door quietly behind me. We sat in her living room. I held the adoption record in my hand. She looked at me curious. Sophie, I need to show you something. She took the document. Her eyes skimmed it. Then she stopped, hands trembling. Why did you never tell me? I didn't know, she whispered. Looking at her mother's name, there made her face go pale. She held the paper like it was a hot coal. Sophie, what does this mean? It means Claire is your mother, that she gave you up when you were born and changed everything so no one would find out. Sophie's hand pressed to her chest. She stared at the ceiling. Tears welled up. All those years, the speeches, the photos, the family gatherings, I thought I belonged to the Landers family. She shook her head. I thought so too. Her voice cracked. You weren't lying, you didn't know. I asked no. I had no idea. We sat in silence so long the air felt thick between us. I watched Sophie's fingers tremble, the document slipping a little. The realization crashing into her that the woman who stood at my brother's wedding was her biological mother. With that revelation, Sophie's expression hardened and then softened. I saw confusion, guilt, sorrow, and betrayal all in a single blur. I stood up. I needed air. I walked toward the window and stared out at the street below. Her shoulders shook when she spoke. Why now, Ethan? Why bring this to me on the eve of all this? Because you deserve to know. She looked back at me. What will happen to us when everyone else finds out? I don't know. She wrapped the paper close and exhaled slow. I promise you I will protect you no matter what. She nodded quietly, and in that moment I saw Sophie not as Liam's bride or my brother's fiancée, but as a daughter with no idea she was born into a lie. The afternoon sun shifted. The curtains cast long shadows across the floor. Sophie lowered her head, quiet tears tracing lines down her cheeks. I waited silent in her apartment, the air heavy with things unsaid. I stood behind the velvet curtain in the back of the chapel, watching Sophie walk down the aisle tended by her father. The stained glass windows cast colored light across her white dress, and every step she took seemed soaked in irony. I clutched Noah's hand, the photograph hidden in my other pocket, burning like truth I wasn't sure I was brave enough to say aloud. Guests shifted in their seats, soft whispers carrying between pews. Flowers scented the air. Music played quietly. My heart pounded. This was the moment. If I stayed silent, Claire would succeed. If I spoke, I risked tearing everything apart, yet letting this lie stand felt like letting my father's grave stay restless. Noah squeezed my hand. He still believed Sophie could help, that she might see something in the photo none of us did. I turned toward him and gently pulled the photograph from inside my coat, smoothing the creases. He watched, hopeful, confused, maybe scared. I nodded at him. He handed it to Sophie as she passed by. Her smile faltered the moment she saw it. Her eyes widened and the bouquet she carried trembled in her hands. The aisle felt endless. The choir's voices rose behind her, but the world went silent in Sophie's gaze. That pause, that look, pain etched in her features, was more powerful than any sermon. She gasped, a voice caught in her throat. Sophie's face drained color. Bridesmaids exchanged worried glances. Guests murmured. Liam froze midway down the aisle. I stepped from behind the curtain, walking toward the front with firm steps. Air felt thick, every eye on me. I raised my voice just enough. Sophie, this photograph, look at it closely. Sophie stared, unwilling but trembling. The woman in the photo, her mother. I saw recognition. I saw betrayal. I saw everything crash together in her eyes. Claire Madison stood just to the side under the arch of flowers. Hands clenched at her sides, watching. This is the woman who destroyed my father's world and tried to bury the evidence. Claire Madison pretended to be someone else. But she is in that photo, and she is here. Silence roared through the chapel. The organ drone wavered. People gasped. Some stood, others recoiled. Sophie dropped the bouquet and stared at Claire as though seeing her for the first time. Liam, unable to speak, stood frozen too. Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. She turned and fled down the aisle, veil tangling at her feet. I stood rooted, avoiding Claire's eyes. I wanted to say more, but realized the words would only hurt. The pastor stopped. People began shifting, the shock pulsing in the air. Noah stepped in front of me, small and trembling. I put an arm around him, though my own legs shook. Guests murmured louder, some crying, others just staring. I felt hands on chairs, clutching hymn books. Someone gasped at Claire. Her expression flickered, defenseless, maybe for a moment, before smooth control reclaimed her face. Liam hovered near the front, looking back and forth, unable to decide whether to comfort his bride or confront his brother. Sophie's mother gasped, covering her mouth. The silence hung like judgment. I turned and followed Sophie's retreating figure down the side aisle. Her sobs echoed. The church doors stood ahead of her, wide open. The stained glass cast shards of color on the marble floor. I reached her just as she reached the steps, and I couldn't hold back. Sophie, I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen here, but you deserve the truth. She turned to me, eyes red and furious. Why now, Ethan? Why would you tell them here? Why before everything? Because everyone needs to know she's not just a guest or friend. She's someone who ruined years of our lives. Her voice shook. You could have told me sooner, I know, but you never gave me a chance. Her knees buckled slightly and I caught her. I held her, feeling the rigid tension in her shoulders, the weight of betrayal she never asked for. I whispered in her ear, just loud enough for only her to hear. I'm so sorry, I love you, and I will protect you no matter what. We stood like that for a long moment. Outside, someone whispered that the wedding was over. The florist wilted arrangements. The congregation stirred, and I realized the dress I'd watched her walk in was stained by more than tears. Sophie turned away, pulling me with her toward the back door. Guests stared, but no one stopped us. I opened a hand toward Noah, his face pale. I saw guilt in his eyes. I squeezed his hand. You didn't cause this. He looked up at me, but I was the one who dropped the picture. No. Your mother made choices you didn't even know about, pined us. The doors closed on the bride's last steps as a landers. Outside the air was cool, night had fallen, lights under oak trees flickered, cars idled, hymn books lay forgotten on pews, the chapel behind us still trembled with silence. The chapel behind us still trembled with silence. I followed Sophie down the stone steps into the courtyard where lanterns hung in strings from the oak trees, their light soft and shaking. Liam was standing near the fountain, arms crossed, shaking his head. He looked betrayed and angry in equal measure. I approached, hearing how quickly his voice raised when he saw me. Why didn't you tell me sooner, Ethan? His voice cracked. I paused, trying to find words that wouldn't hurt more than they already had. Because I didn't want to believe it myself. His jaw tightened. You destroyed her wedding by truth, and what good does that do? I reached into my coat and pulled out the folder of documents Aaron and I had assembled. All the receipts, the bank transfers, the sealed birth certificate, everything I had been hiding from him. Look at this, I said quietly. He took the documents, flipping pages with trembling fingers, his eyes shifting from each paper to mine. This is Claire's signature on baby Sophie's birth record. He traced the name with disbelief. This is where she paid Toby to tamper with the guest entry. This is where she had cameras removed so no one would see her face. I saw the shock wash over Liam's face like someone waking from a long dream. Liam. Sophie. Sophie is my fiancée. She was your daughter and I didn't know. He dropped his head as if the weight of every lie had fallen on his shoulders. Sophie stood a few steps away, falling freely. She looked smaller in her wedding dress now, the lace and silk seeming too delicate for the storm she carried inside. Moments later, Claire emerged from the crowd, quiet, composed. But her eyes were sharp. She walked toward us with slow, aggressive soul. Mother Claire's lips parted, but no words came out at first. The hush around us deepened. Liam stepped between Sophie and Claire. Don't come any closer. Claire raised one hand as if to reach out. I saw fear flicker in her eyes. I'm sorry, Ethan, she said, voice soft, almost hollow. Sophie stared past her. Why? Now, Mother. Why, when I thought we had built something real? The life I believed in. Claire swallowed because I thought I could make it right this way. Liam shook his head. By lying, by pretending, by using people like chess pieces. Claire's face remained calm, but tears formed in her eyes. She looked at Sophie, then at me. I didn't know how else Sophie looked at me. Voice trembling. Was I ever anything more than proof? Liam's expression broke. You deserved better. Noah stood behind me, small and stiff. He looked between Claire and Sophie, then toward me. My heart ached for him and for Sophie. You didn't cause this, I said, stepping forward gently. Noah, my photo. It's not your fault, I said quickly. Everyone else was blind. Noah's shoulders heaved. I reached out and pulled him in. We stood there as Sophie turned away from Claire quickly, her steps light as if she could float away from everything. Liam picked up Sophie's hand and held her arm for a moment. She didn't pull away, but didn't look at him either. The lanterns cast long shadows. The night breeze stirred petals from the flower arrangements. They floated at our feet. Claire said nothing further. She stood alone under the oak trees framed by lantern light. Her figure small and wounded. Sophie whispered something I could barely hear. I'm not going to see you again. Then she walked away from Claire, toward Liam, toward Noah, toward me. We watched as her figure disappeared into the crowd, her dress brushing the stones, her tears still fresh. Liam turned to me, voice low. "Thank you for what?" "For telling the truth. I don't know what comes next, but thank you." I nodded, my throat tight. Noah leaned into my side, seeking comfort. I wrapped my arm around him, feeling both strength and exhaustion. We stood in silence under moss-draped oaks. The wedding forgotten for now, the night alive. With grief, I breathed in the humid air, tasting tears and jasmine. Smelling the last candle smoke, everything had broken, and for the first time something true remained. Everything had broken, and for the first time something true remained. The courtroom was quiet, sunlight slanting through tall windows, dust motes dancing in the rays like silent witnesses. Aaron Lewis stood by my side as Judge Harwood reviewed the evidence we had submitted. The original will from 2007. Claire's forged documents, bank statements tracing her payments to Toby Grant to tamper with cameras and suppress footage. All there unmistakable. Sophie sat behind me, looking small but resolute. Liam beside her, jaw clenched, hands folded. Noah stood at the edge of my seat, gripping his photo. I could feel his trembling before the judge spoke. The judge's gavel came down lightly and then sharply. The ruling was in our favor. The estate would be restored under Dad's name. Assets misappropriated would be reclaimed where possible. Claire Madison would no longer have any legal standing in Caldwell Structural Group or Caldwell Family Finances. A silence spread through the courtroom, thick and full. Sophie exhaled soundlessly. She turned toward Claire, who stood a few seats behind. Shoulders hunched but face still composed, Claire did not challenge the ruling. The documents had spoken louder than any excuses she might have prepared. After the hearing, we left the courthouse in the late afternoon light. The air smelled fresh with rain earlier in the day, cool and clean against my skin. Sophie held her birth certificate in her hands, edges soft and gentle. She looked at me very slowly. "Thank you, Ethan. You did what was right." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but no apology needed anymore. The truth had set us free in a way I never believed possible. Sophie turned away from Claire with dignity. She is no longer bound by the lies she inherited. She walked beside Liam and Noah into a new chapter of her life. A life built on chosen truths instead of inherited betrayals. Noah tucked the photograph into a frame I had bought that morning from a small antique shop in Charleston's French Quarter. I mounted it on my kitchen wall. It looked small but powerful. A reminder that even faded truths still deserve a shrine. Liam pulled me aside near the courthouse steps. "You saved our name." I hesitated because I had done more than that. I just tried to be honest when it mattered. He nodded and placed a hand on my shoulder. "That's enough." Later that evening at the Caldwell home, we gathered quietly in the dining room. No fanfare, no guests. Just Sophie, Liam, Noah, Aaron, Dottie, and me. We shared dinner with dishes made from recipes Mom used to cook. Grace said by Liam. Plates passed slowly. Each of us touched by relief and sorrow. A crack in family bonds healing with each bite. I sat there looking at Sophie's face, seeing strength I didn't know she had. I saw Noah's smile, small but certain. I saw Liam finally unburdened. And I felt peace like I hadn't in years. The road here had been littered with lies, betrayal, hate, but also moments of kindness, courage, and love. I realized family is not always about blood. It is about facing what hurts us, refusing to let it define us, and choosing to protect one another even when truth hurts. If you ever find yourself holding a secret that feels too heavy, know this: you are not alone. Speaking truth can change lives. If this story moved you, If you believe in justice, if you think even the quiet ones deserve to be heard, please subscribe, share with someone who would understand, and give this video a like, so more people can see that truth matters.